forward a lot of men saying that there's a good deal of gay sex abuse underway in the world of wrestling, and everybody all these years has been scared to step forward. Now come forward a number of people to say, because I wouldn't have sex with another guy in the game, I couldn't get promoted, including three, honestly, some... Well, listen, while you're laughing, this has been a not-so-funny issue for women. Now we have a casting couch, essentially, alleged, in the wrestling game, and some guys are saying, I lost my job because I wouldn't do this to this guy who was higher, more powerful than me on the ladder. And before you think this is trivial, first of all, let's understand that a couple of these charges involve kids, 14 years old, juveniles. You go to jail for a long time if you're involved with sex of any kind with a juvenile. One more point. The Wrestling Federation, you know how you tee-hee, ha-ha, what a joke, hoo-hoo, $1.7 billion in 1990. That's more revenue that has been generated by the NFL. So while you're laughing, somebody is whistling all the way to the bank. We have three people who used to be in the wrestling game who are going to tell you that they indeed encountered people who wanted sexual favors, and they were professionally penalized when they said no. And if you think the WWF is hiding behind lawyers, here is the head of that organization, who has accepted, incidentally, recently, resignations from two executives who stand accused of gay sexual harassment. He'll have a prepared statement. First, let's get the charges underway here. Gentlemen, Murray Hodgson, hired by Vince McMahon, here on my left, for the TV job. You were the commentator. And then fired 2 months later. What happened? Can you specifically, and without taking us around the world, tell us, what is it that happened to you?
I wouldn't sleep with the vice president of operations, so they fired me.
Is the vice president of operations one of those who resigned?
Yes, he is.
And do you want to name him?
I don't think that'd be necessary.
What did you announce? Did you do any color for any telecasts?
Yes.
About how long did you do the color?
Oh, I started for about a month. They hired me for a 2-year deal, and it just went right out the window when I decided that I didn't want to sleep with the vice president.
Was there any touching? Was there any kind of vulgar locker room activity? We're trying to be specific here, Murray, as a court of law would oblige any person to be of any gender.
It was a little worse than that. He blatantly threatened my job security.
He didn't say sleep with me, did he? Is that the way men talk?
I don't think this is the proper forum to be discussing.
I agree with you, and I appreciate very much you're bringing a certain amount of decorum to this. This is a daytime television show, and we don't want to draw any dirty pictures. Did it happen more than once?
No.
Just once?
Yeah.
And then how long after you said no were you dismissed?
Just a couple of weeks.
Barry Orton. Here's Barry O, the former professional wrestler, who you think you lost your job with the WWF after refusing similarly.
Actually, no, I've never actually said that. Okay, that's something that the media has come out, and with the stories that I've given, they have kind of turned it around to where I've said that. I've never said that. However, I had encounters with two of the gentlemen that have resigned since the allegations began. And these incidents, of course, happened in 1978, which is a long time ago. However, the impact and the gravity of the situations are very severe. And, you know, if they were behaving that way then, and, you know, they would be behaving that way now, I would expect.
No laugh here. You accuse an executive grabbing your crotch, legs, and chest, and wouldn't stop.
Yeah, well, I was in between the two of them in the back seat of a car on a trip.
You were in the center.
Right.
And you thought it to be a place where a junior guy has to sit.
Pretty much,
This would be early 80s?
This was 1978.
78.
Right.
So this is before the billion-dollar Wrestling Mania pay TV Hulk Hogan
yes.
era. And you had to drive. You know, you guys weren't weren't walking in money then.
Right, and everyone, you know, the more people in the car, the better, because everyone would split the expenses and
right.
keep their travel.
And then don't you saying that you got out of the car and said, not me, and...
Oh, yeah, you know, went on for several minutes. I finally demanded that the car be... At first, I thought it was kind of funny that they were joking, but then it became, you know, harassment.
Right. Barry, it would be hard for a jury to feel a whole lot of sympathy for a guy of your size, you know what I mean? A helpless woman you're not. How old were you when this transpired?
19 years old. Probably about 35 pounds lighter.
And also probably not altogether together in your head, like a lot of 19-year-olds. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely not. You know, and I was trying to be accepted into, you know, into the business. Yeah. I was young, I was green.
And you got the big dream ahead of you. Maybe you're going to be the big guy. And there was money if you got on the main card.
Made, yes.
Yeah. So you're following your dream, and I suppose you want us to know, among other things, that when a couple of guys in the game, executive types, come on to you like that, and you're 19 years old, you may, you know, you may be a little hesitant to tee them off.
Of course. You know, and so I endured it for as long as I could until it became, you know, I started feeling suffocated or, you know, and I couldn't take it anymore.
Tom Hankins, you're likewise a pro wrestler. What's your story, Tom?
Well, I'm a former pro wrestler. I got out of the business about 4 years ago, but back in 1985 in Los Angeles, California, at the University Hilton Hotel, after the WWF had run a card at the sports arena, I was sitting at a bar with, I guess, can I name these people?
Sure, go ahead.
With Pat Patterson, Andre the Giant, Dr. Jerry Graham, and Mike LaBelle. He was a Los Angeles promoter at the time, or a former promoter in Los Angeles.
Right.
And we sat there drinking maybe for an hour or so. I was talking to Pat. I'd known Pat for maybe 6 months. I knew he was gay, but, you know, it didn't matter to me if he was gay or not. And I knew he was actually kind of running the shows in L.A. at the time. I don't believe he was in position as the booker yet. And I asked him...
Let me interrupt to say that he is one of the executives who has resigned.
Right.
Very good, sir.
And I asked him what was the chance of using me to do jobs, which means I was a loser. I'm not real big. I never made a lot of money in the business. I didn't really expect to go in the WWF, make a lot of money. But
you wanted to be in the game?
Yeah, I loved the business. I worked for $10 a night sometimes in Tennessee, just to wrestle, just to be in the business.
Right.
At the time, in '85, I was wrestling in Hawaii and Mexico and Southern California. So I asked Pat for, you know, if you give me a shot or at least a tryout. He said, well, you got 2 chances, slim and none. He goes, well, there is one way. And he wanted me to come up to the room with him and have oral sex with him. And I said, oh, I'm not interested. And after that, I went to the next show they had at the sports arena. Went down to the dressing room where they'd always let me, you know, I was in the dressing room, friends with a lot of the other wrestlers there. And Pat had me physically thrown out after that, acted like he didn't know me.
Right. What brings you forward now, gentlemen?
Actually, I came forward because when Vince said Barry's charges were ridiculous, it was just, I knew it was something that went on in the business, and anybody in this business really knew about it, knew what was going on with Patterson.
So this is like this is a feature of this culture that has been underway for a long time. And because it often involves near jobless, vulnerable young males who wanted to be either in the game or on the card, they'd back up and nobody wanted to blow any whistles. And I think, if I may, this also should be said, you didn't get a lot of press scrutiny. Nobody took you seriously anyway. Mainstream sports press today doesn't. And Mushnick of the New York Post writes a piece, Phil Mushnick of the New York Post, his lead last week, the billion-dollar pro wrestling empire is about to be shaken to its foundations by a teenage boy scandal, the Post has learned. All right, here's part of the story then, and Mr. McMahon, sir, you are the boss. You are what we would call in my neighborhood, when we were growing up, a successful big shot. This is some operation you have. Over $1 billion in annual revenue. You have, throughout the 80s, taken this thing that so many people snicker at. You have filled the Pontiac Superdome with the help of Hulk Hogan and an occasional theatrical idea that included Cyndi Lauper and the marriage of kind of pop music with this through the roof. Through the roof. The PGA should pray for these kinds of revenue. And now, here you are being accused, Mr. McMahon, of presiding over an organization that looked the other way while these sex harassment charges were being, sex harassment activity was taking place. Sir, you wanted to say.
We've never looked the other way. and anything. And I'm very happy to confront everyone today with whatever allegation they have. The three individuals about whom most of these allegations are hurled are no longer with the WWF. We have started an independent investigation on our own to get to the bottom of all of this, and that's why we're here today, is to get to the bottom of it. We may even learn something here today that my investigators do not know. I want to get to the bottom of it just like you gentlemen do.
What would you like to say to him? Anybody?
I'd like to say that it's about time because up until now you've been animately denying that not only that this is taking place, but that, and you're saying that you knew nothing of it, and I just find that really difficult to believe.
Well, there's no reason. How do you find it difficult to believe that I knew nothing of it? Why would I condone this kind of activity and risk this alleged kind of revenue?
Because, Vince, because you are the king of an empire, and you have eyes and ears everywhere, and it is so common, at least the topic of conversation for 3 to 5 minutes every night in the dressing room, because a lot of the guys, they have to put up with it, and they hate it, because if they say anything, they're out of a job.
I don't believe that to be the case, but there may be some of it. If that's the case, then let's get to the bottom of it. I'm anxious to learn, just as you are.
Well,
I want a wholesome organization. I want an organization that everyone can be proud of. I want to get to the bottom of it, just like you do.
This happened to me. I tried to call you. I called the WWF offices. You were always in a meeting. They took my number, said you'd return my call. But, you didn't want to talk to me, basically. And I'm sure at the time you didn't know who I was, didn't know what I had to say. But, I tried to explain it to whoever I talked to, and I called. And, they didn't want to...
This was when, sir?
1985.
I don't recall the telephone
Has
call.
there been any lawsuit?
Do you believe that sexual harassment exists in your workplace?
I believe that there's a possibility of sexual harassment existing everywhere. And
I asked directly if it was in the World Wrestling Federation.
And I don't want it in my organization. I don't want it.
I'd like to reiterate the question. Do you believe there is sexual harassment amongst the wrestlers or employees at the World Wrestling Federation today?
There is a possibility of that. That's why I have these independent investigators to come in.
And who are these independent investigators?
Fairfax Group Limited. And I would like, to hear what you have to say, and everyone has to say. I want to get to the bottom of it.
Would you therefore believe that because of all these allegations coming forward and more corroborating evidence proving that there's no doubt sexual harassment is running rampant in the World Wrestling Federation, that you are definitely going to come public and do something about it?
Why wouldn't I? If in fact that is the case, why wouldn't I do something about it? Why would I risk what we have?
Because you haven't done anything about it until it became public, because you thought it was under the water.
Because I had no knowledge of it.
I made knowledge of it to you when I was fired, and you just blew it off and let me go. I retained a lawyer.
Because you were not very good. You were not a very good announcer. You could not. That's the only reason why you were fired. You could not make the transition from radio to television. That is the only reason why you were fired.
I would like to remind you, sir, that I have a 2-year contract. 2 years.
You also have a clause in your contract that states, and as you know, you were hired on a trial basis.
I was not hired on a trial basis.
You do not have a contract?
Mr. McMahon, I have a 2-year deal with your firm.
In that contract, you will note, in a clause, it states very clearly, and I have it outlined for all to see here today, that you can be fired almost at whim if, in fact, you're not doing a good job. You did a horrible job. That's the only reason why you were fired. That's it.
Maybe I should point out, first and foremost, that might be your inability to pick good talent.
It could be.
You had a national talent search, Vince McMahon.
It could be.
You advertised in Billboard magazine and across many different media sources searching for one man that could be the new face and voice of the World Wrestling Federation. You flew me in back and forth 4 and 5 different times from Detroit, and you chose over the course of 1 year of negotiations that I would be the man for that job. I didn't sleep with your vice president. 2 weeks later, I'm fired. I also want to point out one very important fact. From your office came a letter to my landlord to verify my employment. From that letter, I must bring this point up. It says, Murray Hodson has a very secure job with Titan Sports and is a positive and productive employee. From your office. Just because I don't sleep with your vice president, that qualifies to blow me out of a 2-year deal? I don't buy it.
Right. Well, said very well, but I believe untrue. If, in fact, these allegations against Pat Patterson, whom you won't name, are true, why not pursue the legal course, the legal recourse. Why not pursue?
We are doing that right now.
You are. And you are aware that you waited 6 months after you were let go to bring these homosexual charges against Pat Patterson. 6 months you waited. Why?
September 14th.
If in fact you were fired on